Okay, I'll make it 6:15, so I'll start now. So welcome to tonight's meeting of the Administration Committee. My name's Daniel Clark, I'm chair of this committee. During the meeting, you'll hear from members of the Administration Committee who are on your screen now. Also present are the EBC officers who will introduce the reports that have been written for the committee. If we experience a connection problem, the meeting will be paused. If a councillor loses connection or joins later, they'll make this known for the benefit of viewers. If I lose my connection, Vice Chair Keith House will take over. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. So Nikki, are there any apologies for absence, or Laura if Nikki's unable to connect?
No, Chair.
Apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. No apologies. Thank you very much. So next item is declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest to make? If you could let us know in chat. Okay, I'll take that as no. So minutes of the meeting on the 9th of December 2020, that's the third item on the agenda. Are there any comments to be made on these minutes? No, okay, do I have a proposer that they're a correct record?
I'll propose them, Chair.
Thank you, Keith. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thanks. Any debate? No. Okay, please unmute to signal agreement.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Great, thank you.
Chair, I won't vote as I wasn't present at that meeting.
Okay, that's fair enough. So you've got that, Laura, is that okay?
Absolutely fine, Chair.
Great. So item 4, there's no public participation as nobody registered to speak. So I'll go on to item 5, which is the vehicle age policy temporary relaxation due to COVID-19. And I'll ask the Senior Licensing Officer, Andy Jeffrey, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
This report of the Head of Legal Services proposes a relaxation of the licensed vehicle age policy until the 31st of December 2021 due to the pandemic to allow a further 1-year licence for any vehicle that has reached the upper age limit. It was agreed under delegated powers in June 2020 as a temporary measure that where a vehicle was due to have a licence renewed prior to the 31st of December 2020 and had reached its upper age limit, a further licence for 1 year shall be granted. This report is a further relaxation for 1 year. This temporary relaxation is proposed to assist the taxi and private hire trade during the COVID-19 pandemic due to a dramatic downturn in business and income. A discussion took place at the last Licensed Transport Forum where the trade requested any assistance the council may be able to offer during these times. A relaxation of the age policy was discussed. Any vehicle requiring a further 1 year licence is to pass a mechanical inspection compliance test to be carried out by Hedge End Depot prior to an application being submitted for a further 1 year licence. This test includes emission testing. The vehicle will also be required to pass a mechanical inspection compliant test to be carried out by Hedge End Depot at the 6-month point of the 1 year licence. 15 vehicles have been identified that have reached the upper age limit at the renewal of their licence during 2021. I am happy to try and answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much for that, Andy. So first of all, I know David's asked to speak, but first of all, do we have any technical questions about the report for Andy? Okay, go ahead, Margaret. Yeah, go ahead, Margaret. Right, is my microphone working okay?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, it was my microphone that wasn't, so
No
apologies for that. I think I'm with you now. What I wanted to ask was on the report under risk assessment, paragraph 7 of the report on page 9, at the end of paragraph 7, right at the top, it says, if the vehicle does not meet the standards set, a licence will not be considered. I was just wondering whether if the vehicle does meet the standard set, a licence will not be considered. Should the not be there? I wasn't quite sure about that sentence. If I could just have a bit of clarification, please. Thank you.
Sure, sorry about that. Yes, if it does not meet the required standard, then a licence will not be granted. If it does meet the standard, we will issue a licence.
So can we remove the not or put another not in, whichever way round? I don't mind, whichever way round is easier, so we get clarification on that sentence, please. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so David, you'd like to speak. Would you like to propose this?
I would. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I would like to propose it. I'd like to say well done to Margaret for spotting the typo error there, and so show she's read the papers. And also thank Andy for the work that he's done on this too, which has been tremendous, because it's not been just a simple, quiet report to write. There's been more work in the background to it. The trade very much wanted to see us doing as much as we can to help them through this exceedingly difficult time. We need to remember that they've lost most of their business at the present time. There's the lack of commuting to business parks. There's people not going out for leisure. There are no cruise ships. There are no aircraft landing and taking off. The railways are operating at about 35% of normal traffic, and so they're really left with short trip shopping pickups and set downs afterwards. So most of their business has been pulled from under their feet, and we need to try and support them as best we can. This is in the discussion we had with them at the Licensed Vehicle Forum. This was one of the ways in which we felt, and they agreed, that we would be able to help them. And so there it is. Andy's given you all the technical side of it, but I hope members will support this, and happy to move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. So do I have a seconder?
Yep, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Keith. Any debate? Okay, and in that case, could councillors please unmute just to signal agreement?
Agreed.
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 Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the exemption to the private hire policy. So I'll go back to Andy Jeffrey for that report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this report is of the Head of Legal Services proposing an exemption from the private hire licensed vehicle conditions to allow the Toyota Prius Plus, which is a manufactured vehicle as a 7-seater family car, to be licensed to carry 6 passengers for school transport purposes only. School transport signage will be displayed on the near and offside of the vehicle, and this would be a condition of the licence. The private hire vehicle policy states the minimum size, height, width, depth and legroom for each seat per passenger. The make and model specified in this report was specifically requested by the private hire operator, whose main business is providing school transport across Hampshire. A discussion has taken place at the last licensed transport forum, where the trade requested any assistance the council may be able to offer during these times. The Toyota Prius Plus is a more affordable and greener option than larger diesel vehicles and is widely used by the licensed trade. The 2 rear seats meet the standard width, but the height falls slightly short of the standard measurement. Whilst inspecting this model of vehicle, I was able to sit straight up in the seat. For an adult, the entering and leaving of this vehicle for these 2 rear seats is suggested to be not as easy as the standard seats. The private hire operator has an obligation to ensure the passengers he is conveying in the vehicle are done so in comfort. The operator is suggesting he would be using the vehicle to carry children between the ages of 6 and 9 years. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Andy. So does anyone have a technical question on the report? Okay, go ahead, Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a technical question. I just wanted to know, you did mention that this was to help people during COVID. Is this requirement just over COVID, or is this a permanent change to the regulations, please?
Thank you, Councillor. No, this is would be a continuation. It was more to try and assist during COVID with the replacement of some of the vehicles which need replacing, and the operator was trying to look at more greener and slightly cheaper versions.
Okay. Okay, Louise, you've got a question. You okay?
Yeah, I was just waiting for the red box. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I only had a quick question really, which is, it says it's a 7-seater. Obviously, that includes the driver. Is it? This is probably just a technical thing about how we transport young people to school. Is it normal for a young person to sit next to the driver? Is that something that normally happens in when they go to school? And the other thing, I think you may have clarified, but I don't know how tall 9-year-olds are nowadays. I know that they seem to be a lot taller than when I was a 9-year-old, and I haven't really grown much since. So I just want to make sure that our young people are comfortable and safe while they're travelling. So I hope that all makes sense.
Sure, thank you, Councillor. Yes, the children do sit in the front of the vehicle, and the operator's intention is to have 6 children in the vehicle, so all passenger seats would be occupied, and yes, children do come in all shapes and sizes these days, but should we get any complaints about this vehicle, then obviously we would look at whether the option should continue, but the operator has an obligation to make sure that his passengers are comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Right, okay, David's asked to speak, so would you like to propose this report, David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, be pleased to propose acceptance of this report. Not a lot to say in addition to what Andy's already said and answered the important questions that have been asked there. I think this is a step change for an operator to get greener and more environmentally friendly vehicles on the road rather than older diesel minibuses, traditional minibuses. That in itself, I think, will enable a more comfortable ride for the passengers, but comfort is important, as is safety, naturally. Yes, I was a tall 9-year-old child, and cars may not have fitted some of when I was younger necessarily, but we are talking about 9-year-olds down to 6-year-olds. So I think the vast majority of them will be able to sit comfortably in this vehicle. But as Andy says, we can always review this at a later date if the problems arise. I don't think they will. I think this is the right thing to do at this time. A, for helping towards COVID and the problems there, but also to move towards a more environmentally friendly vehicle on the road, especially with an operator who has a very large number of vehicles which are in use, not just in Eastleigh, but across the county. So happy to move the paper.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yep, seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Any debate? Okay, so could everyone unmute just to signal agreement, please?
Agreed.
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 Okay, that's great. So we'll move on to the last item. So Andy, thank you very much for this evening. If you wish to go, that's fine. Thank you for your help this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So next item, last item, community governance review for the unparished area of Eastleigh Borough. So please could Dickon Bright, who for the benefit of viewers is the strategic planning manager, introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, you have the report in front of you that was considered by the Eastleigh Local Area Committee last week, and the recommendations from that committee have been tabled earlier today for your information and consideration. That ELAC recommends the creation of 2 new parishes in the unparished area of Eastleigh. The only other thing to draw your attention to is the criteria as set out in the guidelines to the relevant act here, which is about the identity and interests of the local community, community cohesion being part of that consideration, and convenient and efficient governance and service provision for the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So are there any questions about the report first of all? Okay, so I'll go to Keith then, who is going to propose the recommendation. So Keith, please.
Thank you very much, Dan. And yes, this did go, as Dickon has said, to the Eastleigh Local Area Committee last week, and it was a really good debate and really interesting. I was cooking my evening meal listening to Eastleigh Local Area Committee, which is something I would never have thought I'd been able to do if it hadn't been for the pandemic over the course of the last year. And I think there was a spirited debate about some of the options. Dan, I think that your point of view won the day during the course of that view, and the debate was, I think, therefore pretty balanced, and the conclusion was the right conclusion, which is that with 84% of those who took part in the process backing parishing in the unparished area, and then a pretty clear steer from residents, particularly in the northern part of the town, wanting to see Boyett Wood established as a separate council alongside Eastleigh, probably town council rather than parish council. That clearly was the direction of travel of the meeting. And seeing the mapping of where the responses came from just today, it was quite interesting that of the few that didn't want any local council for the area, 10 of those were people who voted from Chandlersford, Bishopstoke and Fair Oaks. I'm not quite sure why they would have wanted to stand in the way of democracy in the unparished area. So a good debate, a good conclusion, a local parish council for Boyett Wood and a town council for Eastleigh. The rationale behind all this has been well rehearsed, in fact, again, from a motion that you put to council, Dan, which was that local democracy is best served when more local people can get involved in decision making, take decisions for themselves, and the more we can devolve decision making to local communities and the local people, the better. We've got the added pressure that there is still a hint from government that they might want to see very large unitary authorities created, which would mean that local people in the unparished area at present will be the only part of the borough without any form of local governance in the event of large unitary authorities being established. So we therefore need to put a recommendation to council this evening, and we also then need to think about how we're going to take this forward. And I've circulated in advance of this meeting, I think we may have a slide available to us to pop up, a process of how we could take this forward, which establishes those 2 parish councils, but also progresses fairly speedily some work on thinking about warding and electoral arrangements with the administration committee being able to take the final decision rather than having to go back through council again. I suspect that's probably a quite straightforward process, and the recommendation that I'll move is on the screen now. So thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. So do I have a seconder?
Chair.
Okay,
I'm happy to second that.
thank you, Sarah. Would you like to speak now?
I don't really want to say anything, except I think it was a very spirited debate. I think it's a good step forward, and I think we should just do it. Yeah,
I agree. I'm very reluctant to repeat comments that I've made lots of times before, but I support this recommendation. So, Margaret.
Thank you,
Margaret
Chair.
would like to speak. Go on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Basically, I in principle support this. I think having the parish does work, and certainly with Chandlersford, which I think is the last time we formed a parish was Chandlersford, which I was highly involved with. So yes, I think it does work, and I think I welcome this. I meant to say under questions, but I sort of missed my slot because I couldn't type fast enough. So I hope you'll bear with me if I just ask a couple of things which hopefully you can clarify for me. I did wonder whether any thought had been given to asking Albrook whether they wanted to join in with Boyett Wood as they're adjacent, and Albrook is quite small and might benefit from being involved with a larger overall parish council. And the other thing I was not clear on in the report, what does shadow council mean? I don't think we've ever had one of those before, and I'm a little concerned about the terminology and what it might mean, and I'm not really in favour of that from what I can read about it, so I'd like clarification on that before we go, before I take a final view.
Okay, well, on Albrook, I happen to be chair of Albrook Parish Council as well, and that's a straightforward no. Albrook is happy being its own parish council for its own community. Keith, would you like to pick up a point about the shadow council?
Yes, thank you very much. There was a shadow parish council in Chandlersford. Margaret might not have been aware of it. It was the Chandlersford Local Area Committee. There are a small number of decisions that have to be taken on behalf of the new parish council, or in this case parish councils, before it actually goes for election. Those include things like, for example, setting the first precepts, because the first precept has to be set before the council is elected. Otherwise the council would have no precepts. So those are pretty well basic admin type things. The proposal is that we actually use what we did in Chandlersford as a model for how to go forward, because having been around this loop not quite that long ago really, we can just repeat that. And so, yeah, it's nothing sinister. It's fairly straightforward. There's basic admin that has to take place, and the Eastleigh Local Area Committee is best placed to do that because they're the nearest thing we've got to a parish council at the moment.
Thank you very much for that, Keith. That was really helpful. I think if you had said local area committee there, I wouldn't have had a problem. The fact that it said shadow council, I wonder what on earth you meant. And so now I know that and understand the background to that. Can I suggest, and no more than that, it might be useful to talk to members of Chandlersford Parish Council who were involved right at the start of some of the teething problems we had in setting up the parish council. It might be a useful piece of information that we could contribute to helping with setting up this new parish council stroke town council, because there were some issues at the start, and I think it might be useful to put that into perhaps the working group discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, so Nick next then, please.
Thank you. Yes, Margaret beat me to it. The question was, what about Albrook? I think you've answered it fairly clearly. I don't understand the rationale, but frankly, I feel that this should be a decision made by ELAC. They've made their decision, and that's that as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the rationale is that it's a separate parish and it wants its own parish council. Okay, so next then, Louise.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to ask about Albrook because historically that was Albrook and North Boyett, and I believe that as an administrative committee we took on board their view to have the name change. So I did wonder whether, if there's going to be a Boyett Wood one, whether the North Boyett element of the Albrook Parish Council would move across, but perhaps that's a bigger conversation. And the other thing I thought was I'm genuinely disappointed by the turnout and saying that there's a mandate to change anything. And I absolutely agree, ELAC, and I think it's good that we're going to have a town council, and it's good that there's going to be parish councils. I'm all for democracy, but 95% of people were ambivalent, probably at best, about whether there was or wasn't a council. And I think that's a real shame, particularly as every single household had the opportunity to comment. But apart from that, I just did want to know about North Boyett and how that would now fit into it. Thank you.
Okay, well, just to answer that point, I mean, originally it was Albrook Parish Council, and then in late 2010 it was changed to Albrook and North Boyett because a small number of residents wanted that change. But actually, over time, a lot of members of the parish have felt that that's not appropriate, that actually the parish boundaries represent what was Albrook, you know, for example, Ham Farm was always historically in Albrook. So a number of residents and people that got elected to the parish council asked for it to be changed back to just Albrook, to represent Albrook. And that's what it now is, Albrook Parish Council. So when there was a consultation, only 2 residents objected to that. So I think in the spirit of localism, any parish has got the right to have its own, you know, to request its own parish council, to have its own parish. You know, so I think we just need to be happy that Albrook has its own parish council and doesn't want to be forced to join any other local area. In terms of the mandate, you know, it is a free country and people aren't obliged to even take part in local elections. And so you do have to act on the wishes of those people who do participate. I think you could add to the fact that, you know, there is an overwhelming majority of people in favour from those people who did participate, that you can add to that they have elected councillors who are clearly in favour of parish councils and whose policy it has been to promote parish councils and to promote transfer of powers to parish councils. So I think there is a mandate for setting up the parish councils. You know, you could apply the argument that a low turnout prevents a mandate to all sorts of elections, unless you go for mandatory elections in this country. It's a problem you're always going to have, you know. But I think it would be pretty dysfunctional if you challenged the mandate on every single issue. So, you know, to be functional, you have to act on the wishes of those people who participate, and clearly the people who participated here want a parish council. So any other debate? Anybody else wish to speak? OK, well, I'll ask Laura then to conduct a roll call for all members to participate in.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Airy?
In favour.
Councillor Atkinson?
In favour.
Councillor Clark?
In favour.
Councillor Corbyn?
Agree.
Councillor Caldry?
In favour.
Councillor Groves?
In favour.
Councillor House?
Agreed.
Councillor Parker-Jones?
Agreed.
Councillor Tyson-Payne?
Agreed.
That's unanimous, Chair.
OK, thank you very much. So that's all the business for tonight's meeting finished. Thank you to the officers for their help, and thanks to all members for your contributions. Have a good evening.
Thank you and good evening.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.